I hate the word can't. I'm all about, you can't say can't, we're just gonna make it happen. Hi everyone. So thank you for coming to my talk all about how traumas inform our creative purpose. Before I get started, I really wanted to set the intentions for this talk. I'm going to talk for about 20 minutes. Hopefully we have time for questions afterwards. And hopefully you take something really useful away from it. But I'm going to be really vulnerable with you in this talk. And in turn, what I'm looking for is for you to also be vulnerable with yourselves. Think about your past traumas, why you exist, and what you want to resolve while you're here. So there's some questions that I want you to write down in your phone or in your notebook to think about while we go through this talk, but also to take the time afterwards to reflect on. So the first question is, why am I here today? The second question is, why am I part of this industry? The next question is, what space do I currently occupy? I'm going to slow down because I know that I talk fast. And then the next question is, how much of that space do I want to occupy for me and why? And then the final question is, how much space do I want to hold for others and why? Hopefully you got some of those questions. Don't worry if you didn't. Essentially, it will hopefully make sense towards the end. Okay, so when I was preparing for this talk, I was reflecting a lot on my experiences in the industry, and I found this quote from a industry publication I was interviewed for maybe 3 or 4 years ago. Everything in this talk is from my perspective. However, I do believe that the traumas that I talk through will be ones that you can connect with. So the truth is, existing in this industry for me has been very traumatic. It's an industry that I've been obsessed with. I've been obsessed with marketing, advertising, the Argos catalogue from a young age, watching the TV ads in between my mum's soaps from as long as I can remember. So entering this industry and not feeling seen, not feeling loved, and not feeling affirmed has been heartbreaking. So we're going to talk about trauma. And this is a word that everyone's using today. It's in our vernacular, which is great. Everyone's going to therapy, progress. But what does it actually mean? So when we look up the meaning of trauma, it's a deeply distressing experience. And essentially, that is personal to you. Whatever you believe has been deeply distressing and for you. And then when we talk about purpose, this is a thing that a lot of agencies are saying, brands are saying, but again, it's something that's personal to you. A person's sense of resolve and determination, and or a reason for which something is done or created. Okay, so in my opinion, your purpose is in the resolution of your trauma. The issue that we have is that within culture, trauma is seen as this negative thing, which it absolutely is, but is considered to negatively impact our potential. And if we believe that, we will never find and fulfill our creative purpose. Okay, so back to me, because a little bit of this is about me. So in frame, you can see a picture of me and my baby brother, George, and my mum. And this is the 90s, and we actually came to the UK in the early 90s. We're all immigrants from Uganda. Me and my brother are of dual heritage, so I'm South Asian and East African. And my mum was a single parent, and she was raising me on an estate in Tottenham, Broadwater Farm. Some of you may have heard about it. And I guess being part of that family and what we represented within this society and the context of society came with lots of ideas and expectations, which meant that I experienced a lot of racism, sexism, and classism. And that has continued into my experience in the industry. So I have 3 traumas that I wanted to share with you that I've experienced and potentially some of you have experienced. So the first one is being told you can't do something. I hate the word can't. And I think anyone that works closely with me will know that I'm all about, you can't say can't, we're just going to make it happen. I think for my mum, she was told can't a lot. She was told that she couldn't raise children that would be successful. And I know that it's gone on to impact my self-expression and my ability to thrive. I remember when I was an account director, and I was told, actually I wasn't an account director, I think I was an account manager, and I was told by an account director that I couldn't or wouldn't be able to go on to be a business director. But 5 years on, I did become a business director. And when I look at that further into the creative work that I've created, in 2017, after feeling stifled and that my career wasn't going to thrive, a great opportunity landed in front of me, which was a brief for a pro bono client, Copperfield. For those who don't know Copperfield, it's a youth breast cancer charity. And me and 2 other women took on the brief because we were really passionate about it, despite not being able to make any money from it as an agency. And what we wanted to do was give young people the confidence to trust their touch through visual representation. And what we ended up doing was actually putting the first full naked breast on daytime TV in the UK, which had never been done before, and we'd been told it wouldn't be able to be done. And that was our ambition in order to drive confidence towards this audience to trust their touch. So we're gonna play the ad, and hopefully you'll spot the 12 frames of nipple.
Play, point, poke, pack, pull, pluck, pause, touch, fiddle, twiddle, jiggle, juggle, touch, stroke, scrub, rub, feel, hold, tickle, tackle, touch, cuff, bounce, knead, squish, score, squeeze, smush, push, press, text, tap, touch. Trust your touch. Copperfield. For free reminders, text boobs to 70300.
So the impact of that, this was 2017, so there was no TikTok, but it did go technically viral. It was a moment that had never been seen on daytime TV, and Clearcast had never, the body that regulate TV ads, they'd never ever approved a full naked breast on daytime TV. And what this did was, it gave representation that this audience needed that had never been done. It opened up conversations around how we represent female identifying bodies, because today the only bodies that we'd seen topless were those of male identifying. It also opened up the conversation around like what areas of your body and parts of your breasts or your chest you should be checking. But it also led to being on national TV on Good Morning Britain. Victoria Derbyshire talked about it and said how radical it was and how progressive and necessary it was. It led to over 20 pieces of press coverage, and like the website, Copperfield's website, had an increase of 800% traffic to the site, which is where we wanted people to go to learn more about touching their chest in order to detect early signs of breast cancer and ultimately save lives. So, trauma 2, being rendered invisible. So this is something I felt a lot, still feel today, which is the fact of feeling not seen. I joined the industry in 2008, 2009, and I didn't see any black or brown women that looked like me that were leading or even at a junior level that were credibly creating work. And this obviously was a massive stumbling block for me, not seeing my potential out there and where I could progress. I remember interviewing for an account director role, and there was the CEO of the agency was coming to interview me, and I went into the reception and I was the only person in the reception waiting. And he came up and kind of walked around, and he kind of just like couldn't see me. And he went up to the receptionist and was like, I'm looking for Rani Patel. And she was like, yeah, that's her. And in that moment, I was rendered invisible because his expectation of what I should look like was his idea of what a South Asian woman should look like. His expectation when he saw me was that I didn't look like a South Asian woman because I had a South Asian name, and he didn't consider that my heritage might have meant that I don't look exactly like what he thinks. So I wanted to share that example, but when we look at that into work, there's two pieces of example that I've had the privilege of working on. And the first one is with Speedo. Earlier on this year, we were able to launch a campaign called Swim United. Speedo realised that there was an issue with young children and young kids leaving school without the skill set to swim. So 1 in 4 children are unable to swim when they leave school. And they recognised that as a category leader, they held the power to change that and to make swimming more equitable. So when it came to that, they realised in order to speak to these children and the parents who are marginalised and come from socially, economically disadvantaged backgrounds, they needed to lead with their stories and have the representation and visibility that hadn't been provided within the swimming category. So we were able to create a programme of work along with a social series, content series that featured 3 parents and their children's stories. Remy, who is a black mother who was actually a very keen swimmer, who is debunking this idea that black people can't swim, and was such a keen swimmer that she was teaching her own daughter to swim. Kathy, who is a disabled single parent who has 2 mixed race children who are also disabled and was also was wanting to overcome that disability within the water. And then Niran, who is a South Asian father who actually didn't know how to swim because of his own cultural and generational traumas around water, but wanted to overcome that by teaching his daughter to swim. So we're going to play each of those films.
When I was little, I swam religiously for a while, and I loved it. I felt really free. When I learned some of the really deep-rooted history with blackness and swimming, it was weird to me because I didn't fit that. Culturally, I want her to feel comfortable with the water because there's so much power in us as black people not being afraid of water.
I love being in the water with the kids. My children feel very heavy when we're out of the water, whereas in the water I can jump up and down holding them, and that feels great. It's definitely taking them a lot longer to learn, but that's fine because as long as they enjoy doing it, I think it's really important for them to do. And they absolutely love it.
Swimming, the first activity we did, it's been a Saturday morning ritual for us. Where my family come from in India, there's a place called Kerala. It's surrounded by water, but no one swims. So I think it's just been a generational thing that's just been passed down. So I want to break that and make sure my kids swim. But if I don't break that now, it's just going to be a never-ending cycle.
So the impact on that we've been able to measure so far is that we've led to 1,300 intensive swim lessons completed, and this was a pilot that we launched at the beginning of the year. Pentland, which is the group that owns Speedo, this was their highest ever campaign in terms of engagement, and it's led to a global rollout, which is exactly what we want to do with work like this. The second piece of work I wanted to share that sits within this trauma is a personal project I did with Clark's Originals last year in March, which was in collaboration with my own platform called Fangirl. This was about centering black female voices of tomorrow for Women's History Month. And I guess this was a response after Black Lives Matter in understanding that black women are the most marginalised and disrespected within society. However, they've informed a huge amount of the culture that we consume globally today when we look at makeup, dance, fashion and music. So I wanted to spotlight the black women that are pushing culture within the UK forward within those scenes and those sectors. And this was also an opportunity for black talent behind the campaign to be seen, because a lot of the creative process doesn't include black women. So I'm going to share these stills from it, but it was also a content series. But the 5 women that we spotlighted was Trina Nicole, who is a plus-size model and dancer, Ray Haven, singer-songwriter, Mata Marial, who is a celebrity makeup artist, George, who's a DJ, and Priya Alawalia, who's a fashion designer. This was also my opportunity to write and direct all of the content for this series, which was called In Her Shoes. And the impact was huge in terms of opening up wider social conversations around the power and the impact of black women, the opportunity that they have, the potential, that they have as creators, as well as, I guess, making other brands look at why they aren't considering this marginalised group more inclusively when we look at Women's History Month. Okay, so the third and final trauma is limited and marginalised by systems that rule. So when we look at the world, it hasn't been designed always by us or for us. And when I look at the industry in particular, it has been designed by white middle-class men, and that has made it quite hard for me to navigate as someone who sits outside of that. So in 2020, I co-founded a platform called Brand Share the Mic, and this was in response to George Floyd's death. And essentially, I think all industries took a step back to reflect on how they've been excluding the black experience and black individuals. And for us as a creative business and a creative industry, we wanted to make that industry more equitable for black content creators. So essentially what we did is that we created a coalition where we invited as many of the mainstream brands out there to hand over their platforms to black content creators who we knew were creating in the same sectors as them, but weren't being invited to create for these brands and weren't being included. And they were doing this away silently, quietly, hidden, and they needed to be spotlighted because there was an opportunity for them to show these brands that there's different ways and sometimes better ways to create. These are the brands that took part over 18 months. We had 60 black voices take over 60 brands, reaching 6 million. And in terms of some of the impact, these are just some of the quotes from the talent that took part. So Brand Share the Mic improved my confidence. I really felt like my voice was really being amplified, and I felt like I was genuinely able to make an impact. 4 out of 5 black talent said that Brand Share the Mic provided opportunities to work creatively with a range of people. And a lot of the brands that we got to partner the black talent with have gone on to work with them more than once and have an ongoing relationship with them. So it's been a great opportunity to create new ways of working, but also springboard young talents' careers. Okay, so what to take from all of this, a step back, is that there's an opportunity to reframe your creative thinking and your creative work. And I guess for me, the ingredients for that are starting with your trauma, which is your deeply distressing experiences, which you're always going to experience day in, day out. It's part of the human experience. Partner that with your sense of resolution. What is it that you want to resolve and why do you exist? To hopefully get to what you create, which are solutions that impacts people for the better. And that's the reason why I come to work every day. And it should be something, and I work out what better is, and that's something that I would encourage you to do. Okay, so the final takeout, if you was gonna walk away with a quote, is this quote from Bell Hooks, All About Love. Some of you might have read it or not. but definitely read it if you haven't. When we look at purpose, we have to kind of tie it into, I guess, love. And my purpose is to extend, you know, my will to extend oneself, to nurture one's own or another's spiritual growth. So when I think about the work that I create, how am I doing that for myself and how am I doing that for others? And that's it.